dream of always more, or you dream of the idea of having a bigger vineyard and doing more and expanding. And I think any winery in Australia or maybe overseas, but Australia particularly, has had this desire. Sort of, you become iconic, and then you decide that you need to like grow 10 times over the years. Like expansion becomes the only sort of possibility, which I think is probably in the end to the detriment of the wine quality and the nature of what you're doing. And so
Hello and welcome to another late episode of Real Wine People. And today I'm talking with Jasper Button of the Commune of Buttons, high up there in the Adelaide Hills. Jasper is a travelling surfer, grew up on this property and travelled surfing through Byron, Bali, and eventually came back to sort of resurrect the vineyard and start the brand along with his sister Sophie. It has been a long time between drinks for me for episodes. I apologise for that. Probably be apologising a lot more. I'll be apologising for apologising soon. We're in the middle of vintage over here right now. Had lots of feedback from all the listeners, all you guys, so thanks so much. Any chance you get, you can drop me a line. We have an email address now, which is hello@realwinepeople.com. You can go to the website, of course, to www.realwinepeople.com, where we have show notes that have links to everything we spoke about today. And some may have noticed we have a new logo, which was designed by Billy Justice Thompson, a South Australian-based artist. Her links are also on the show notes page for Jasper Button. Any questions, comments, please let me know. Thanks again, and I hope you enjoy this episode with Jasper Button. Hi Jasper.
hello,
How are you?
I'm pretty good.
Good.
I think it's working.
Great.
Sounds pretty good.
Cool. Well, thanks for having me, mate, at Commune of Buttons here in the hills. It's a mean driveway you got.
It is.
Yeah. It took me a while to set this gear up and just chat about so much cool stuff just then, and I want to keep doing that.
Mm-hmm.
But I thought first just a general rundown. I mean, were you born here in the hills?
Yeah, so we, I came up to the hills with my family in 1984, so I was 2 years old.
Wow.
We got our first house in Ashton. We lived there for 10 years, and then we moved to this property here in Basket Range in 1995 or 6, and then I've not been living here ever since. I've travelled a lot and lived interstate and overseas, but it's always been home. The vines themselves have been in the ground from that first year. So I think the first vines went in 95. And
Wow. And have they been organic the whole time?
No. So basically, my parents ran the vineyard to sell grapes.
Yep.
And they had contracts with some larger companies, and basically provided grapes for those companies, and used the prescribed formulas to grow the grapes for a long time. I came back from being overseas and traveling 5 years ago, and the vineyard was in disarray. My parents were getting old; they'd had enough of they'd had enough of being viticulturalists and taking care of vines. The price of grapes was really low.
Yeah.
We weren't making any money. We were breaking even or losing money every year. And those bigger contracts and the whole market actually had collapsed in the Adelaide Hills for fruit. That I guess the models weren't sustainable, and the demand just wasn't there. So they were at a point where they were thinking of maybe selling the farm or pulling the vines out. And that's when me and my sister came back.
Right.
Yeah.
So had you been travelling with your sister? Or?
No, she was doing her own thing, but it was, I guess, serendipitous that we ended up both back here at the same time in 2013. Yeah.
And your sister's Sophie, is it?
Yeah, Sophie.
Yeah,
Yep.
Cool.
Yep.
So where were you travelling for 5 years?
So I was actually surfing a lot in on the East Coast in Byron Bay and also in Bali.
Wow.
And just kind of enjoying my 20s. I didn't have any responsibilities, and I was just sort of living life, which was really nice. But I was always in the back of my mind that something could or should happen with the property. And I guess the time was right.
Yep.
I just turned 31 and there was just this thing in the back of my head that kept growing that maybe it was time to come home and see what was going on. Yeah.
Right. So you just rocked up one day and thought, was it anything that finally pushed you to come back? Or?
Yeah. It was a few things. I think I'd done my dash on the North Coast and I was really looking for a new project, a new source of inspiration. I'd always enjoyed growing things and having a vegetable garden and these kinds of things. And I just thought that, to expand that, I'd had no real drive to make our own wine or anything like that. When I got back, I just thought, okay, if the farm is not being economically viable, then surely there's a way. This is a beautiful spot. There's a lot of land here. Obviously, we can do something.
Great.
And that's where I started. Yeah.
So you came back and yourself and Sophie here at the same time, and you just went, look, we're going to jump into this vineyard and get cracking.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't really know what I was doing so much, but we were doing the things, and. Slashing, spraying, putting the wires up, all this kind of stuff. In 13, we didn't have anyone to buy the grapes. And so I started cold calling everyone in the hills. I was just like, okay, someone's going to buy these bloody grapes. Yep. Someone will buy these grapes. Surely someone's going to buy these grapes. And I eventually got to meet Anton von Klopper. So I got his name, I can't remember, from someone who said he's got a vineyard. I don't think it's that productive at the moment. He's making wine. Why don't you give him a call? Yeah. Might have even been Sam Scott, someone like that. And so I got his number off Sam, and we ended up having a chat, and I think he rolled around that afternoon. He was excited for the Pinot, not that interested in the Chardonnay, and but was said, I can pay you good money for the Pinot Noir, and let's begin the journey.
Great.
Yeah.
And so this property here, you're saying is beautiful, but you got 3 hectares. So the block behind the shed that we're in now, that's the Pinot? No.
So the block behind the shed is 1.5 hectares of Chardonnay. Yep. And then going up the hill, there's Pinot Noir. Yep. And then the other side on the east-facing slope of the hill is the Pinot Noir.
Oh, so you got Chardonnay and Pinot Noir.
Yes, yep. And we've got 8 rows of Nebbiolo.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
Yeah. Cool.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
So the Pinot got taken care of. What happened with the Chardonnay and the Nebbiolo?
Well, the Chardonnay, because we couldn't sell all of it, I ended up making 3 barrels.
Right. And you hadn't made wine before?
No, I hadn't made wine before. I went and saw an old family friend, Stephen George, from Ashton Hills, and I got a funny masterclass from him about how to make wine from a white wine from a basket press.
Yep.
And he gave me three barrels and said good luck.
Wow.
And yeah, I didn't really know what I was doing, but it was fun. I mean, we had like straw and basket presses and grapes and
all in this shed here.
Yes,
cool.
Yes.
And that was the 14 vintage or the third?
No, that was 13.
13. Yeah, cool. Yeah.
And it was a total mess and took us almost a whole day to press half a ton.
Oh wow,
fruit.
That's great.
But it was fun.
Yeah,
it was fun, and like it spontaneously fermented like Chardonnay does in barrel. And we made wine, and it was quite funny because I'd always assumed that winemaking was going to be this very technical, very sort of intricate process requiring a lot of control and a lot of manipulation.
Yeah,
and it actually wasn't. It was pretty cool just to squeeze the juice and watch the grapes ferment. And actually, what came out of it was really nice. I was like, "Oh, that's actually pretty good."
Cool. And then what did you do with that wine? Did you bottle it up?
Yeah, we bottled it.
Yep.
And we drank it. We bottled it and we drank it.
You drank it.
We didn't sell it. So like in 13, we didn't sell any wine. Yeah.
Sure. And then 14, you decided to make a few more? Or?
Yeah. So what was beautiful was, so that was kind of the beginning. We had those 3 barrels. We had Anton buying the grapes that year. And actually that same year, Taras also bought a little bit of the Chardonnay.
Cool.
And so we had people that were interested in the vineyard again. And we'd made a little bit of wine, and it was just like starting to grow. So the wheels were slowly beginning to turn again. And there was a renewed sort of interest in what was happening. Yeah, instead of it being an immense chore, which I think my parents had seen it as for a number of years. Like there was interest, there was energy, and I was going over to Anton's every now and again, just to sort of hang out and see what he was doing, and talk wine with him a little bit. And it was I remember the first time we went over there, and he had a bottle of his red. It was just a red blend. It was the cheapest red blend. And at the time he was making these very round, rich, fruity wines. Sure. Picking late, really late. Picking at sort of around 14, 15% potential alcohol, and making very rustic, juicy wines. Lots of oak, lots of flavor, not much acidity, but delicious. Yeah. And it was actually really eye-opening, because in the past, wine had been something that was, don't really get it, sort of, all right, that is a good wine, you tell me kind of thing. And it was that first glass of that wine was very immediate. I was like, oh, this is how wine can taste. This is actually delicious. This is why people are into wine. Yeah. It was very immediate. It was something that I was just like, okay, that is actually really delicious. And that got me really excited, actually, because I was like, oh, it tastes different, but it actually tastes like I think it should taste. Yep. Do you know what I mean? Was that from your vineyard? No. It was just a red blend. I'm sure it was probably a mix of Merlot and Pinot or something like that. But what was exciting for me was it was this new thing. It was cloudy, and it was quite bright in color, quite light, and just had this taste that was just really, really magical. And I was just like, okay, so this is what wine's meant to taste like. How hard is this? Yeah. Or is this hard? Like, tell me more. I was really interested. So that ended up being something that I still remember it. That was like one of the things. I was like, okay, we can maybe make wine. Make wine, maybe. Cool.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome. So the second year you made more Chardonnay again?
Yeah, we made about the same amount of Chardonnay, maybe like one barrel of Pinot. What else did we make that year?
What happened to the Nebbiolo?
So the Nebbiolo actually was grafted 2 years later.
Right, gotcha.
Yeah, so it's top grafted Chardonnay onto Nebbiolo.
Originally it was just the Chardonnay block here and the two Pinot blocks.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, cool.
Yeah. And so, yeah, that was the beginning. 2013, we made a little bit more Pinot. The interest in the vineyard meant that we actually couldn't use too much fruit from here. So I think we got a little bit of fruit from the Piccadilly Valley as well, just to play around with.
Sure.
A little bit of Merlot or something.
Wow, that's amazing. Yeah, you built this vineyard up to be in demand, and then you can't get your own fruit anymore.
Well, that's kind of the way it goes. You know? Like that, and that was due to the fact because people like Anton and Taras and others were really starting to hit their straps in terms of the demand and the interest in their wines in Sydney and in Melbourne. So all of a sudden, they were actually looking for fruit. They couldn't get enough.
Right. Awesome. And what about now? Do you make it all yourself?
Yes. So fast forward 6 years, I guess now.
Yeah.
We make all of our own wine from our place, we've sort of expanded and then retracted a little bit. Like we used to buy in quite a lot of fruit, and now we've gone back into something that's a lot more focused and a lot more farm centric, I guess.
Yeah, sure.
It's a funny wine.
It
like
is
that.
like that. Yeah, yeah. We're facing a similar challenge now, where we bought this vineyard that the new one. What was it? 14. Got it organic. It was massive. We couldn't really ever envisage using all the fruit. So I was like, look, at least if we can't sell our wine, we can sell some fruit as well, and we have that balance. And then same sort of thing happened where demand took off. And we've now using all that fruit. Now we're buying more fruit, and we're just thinking now that it's time to wind that back to the vineyard. I guess it's taken time for, the prices to reflect the work that's going in. Mm-hmm. So we couldn't really afford just to live off the vineyard, but we're getting closer now, which is cool.
Yeah, I think as like a grower producer, you dream of always more, or you dream of the idea of having a bigger vineyard and doing more and expanding. And I think any winery in Australia or maybe overseas, but Australia particularly, has had this desire. Sort of, you become iconic, and then you decide that you need to grow 10 times over the years. Like expansion becomes the only sort of possibility, which I think is probably in the end to the detriment of the wine quality and the nature of what you're doing. And so I've sort of become aware of that more and more, thinking that you can expand in different ways. You can expand in thinking about how you're going to age your wines, how you're going to improve the quality of the fruit coming off the vineyard.
Yeah.
Because I think vineyards are perhaps the most labor intensive crop there is.
Yes, yeah.
I don't know.
Well, it's got to be up there, I reckon.
I don't know. I mean, really, like how many times fingers touch a vine, and how much work goes into the soil and taking care of them, and always there can be more work that can go into them, and looking at making wine in that capacity and expanding in that capacity rather than your actual acreage. That's something that we've really sort of come to terms with in the last few years.
Sure.
Yeah, definitely.
Nice. So this property here, do you grow anything else? It seems to me to be so vast. There's parts that I wouldn't have seen, but there's a little orchard, or you're doing olives, or
So we've got small mixtures of all sorts of things. So we've got another 2 hectares we have sheep.
Great.
So we have 10 sheep. It goes between 10 and 20 sheep. They go through they're in the vineyards in the wintertime, and then they come out of the vineyards in spring and go into the other paddocks. They're a really good tool for maintaining the cover crop in the winter. But you need to use them as a tool, so they can overgraze. So they need to be able to be moved into other areas, and so we need space for them.
Yep.
So we have the sheep, and my parents grew peonies for a long time. So we have about 1 acre of peony flowers.
What are they?
The peony flower, it's a Japanese rose.
Right.
Really.
Okay.
It's
and they're used just for florists, or?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. That was my parents' other sort of passion.
Cool.
And they've always been a part of our story, and walnut trees as well. So we planted maybe 20 walnut trees.
Great.
And I do have a strange sort of idea, when we're a little bit more under control, to actually make a fortified wine,
right,
with green walnuts and other herbs. So it's like a digestive. In Piemonte they call it a chinato.
Yeah, okay. I thought I'd heard of that. Right.
I don't know if they put green walnuts in it.
Yeah, okay. No, all I remember about walnuts.
But making some kind of alcoholic beverage out of the green walnuts, because they're amazing.
Right. Green walnuts, so that you can still eat them when they're green?
So basically, before they lignify inside in the shells, you pick them and you cut them in half, and they're like jelly inside. Basically, they've got a hard rusk, which is the outside shell. Yep. But you can cut them with a knife, and they're almost like a translucent jelly on the inside.
Really?
And you steep that in spirit alcohol, and you make this immensely bitter but really delicious thing.
You've done it before, like in small scale? Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Wow, well done.
And because of all the other herbs that we have here, so we have like Luria, about 5 different kinds of mint, Roman chamomile, elderflower, lemon balm. They're just a few of them off the top of the head. There are so many herbs. It's a beautiful place to grow herbs in the hills, and a lot of them are in abundance and just wild along the creek lines.
Wow.
And so it would be really nice to sort of collect them up and steep them and blend them with wine and with the green walnuts and everything to make something.
Yeah, that's cool.
Some point.
We have a bit of spirit. We have a local distiller that we got certified, so we get the spirit distilled. But it's also, so we've made a fortified, like a port, which the spirit is from our own property, which is cool. But it's also great because when you stuff up your barrels, it's like we experiment, we do things wrong all the time. Yeah. It's like, what do we do with these barrels? Oh, let's get them still. Then you get this spirit and you can make something out of it, so nothing's wasted. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Mm-hmm. I think it's a good way to do it. Yeah, no, I'm into it. I am. Yeah, I think it would be really nice. And those kinds of digestive drinks are they have their place in dining. Yeah. And they can be really speak of a place, mountain herb drinks. Cool. When's it being released? No, exactly. I don't know when we get our act together with all the other things that we've got going on. Yeah. So from the 3 hectares here and the 3 varieties, how many different wines do you make? So we sort of end up making, depending on the year, but we sort of have
six sort of semi-permanent lines of wine.
Yep.
That we make, from this farm. We still buy in a little bit of Shiraz from Mount Torrens, and we buy in a little bit of Pinot Gris from Mount Torrens as well.
Cool.
And so we make a Pet Nat from that.
From the Pinot Gris?
From the Gris, yeah, and then a table red from the Syrah, and then the rest is sort of spinning around the 5 wines that we make from here.
From here, which is 2 Pinots?
Yeah, 2 Pinots, yeah, Baskettown and Gloria. And
are they separate blocks, or is?
Yeah, Baskettown is a bit of a blend. In good years, it's a blend of the 2 blocks, basically. And then the Gloria is from the single hectare of the older vines, which is
facing east.
Yeah.
So the difference there, facing east, are they ripening later?
Well, Pinots are really funny here because it's like really borderline that we can grow it here. Really, like in some years it's fantastic, in some years we really struggle. And it's a real lime bowler. The climate in the Adelaide Hills is it's not really cool climate in the summer. I mean, we do have these days that it's like 35 degrees, 40 degrees, hot, raging heat, and it can last for a week, in the middle of January, February, take your pick. And but what's interesting is that in the evenings it really cools down.
Yeah, I noticed that.
It gets cold, and it gets like devilishly cold. And humid, and you can have these really hot days, and you wake up in the morning, you go out into the vineyard when the sun's coming up, and there's water all over the leaves, and then it doesn't really get super hot until sort of 11 o'clock. So we have this sort of strange kind of duality in the climates in the summertime where it's cool and humid in the evenings and at night, and then it comes through and then really heats up, and by the afternoon it's not very pleasant at all. And so the Pinot, it's funny. Like we can dry grow Pinot Noir here, and we can still get fruit concentration and acidity. We struggle with fruit ripeness,
right?
Like in terms of phenolics,
sure.
And but it's so it's kind of a dance, and I actually don't think that we've got to a point where we're fermenting the grapes in a way that they should be fermented in the hills. I think there's a Pinot style out there for the Adelaide Hills,
right?
That we're
working towards.
Yeah, that we're working towards.
Yeah,
for sure.
Cool.
Yeah, it's the grape that I pay the most attention to and put the most amount of effort into trying to understand what the thing is that it should be.
Sure. And any successes with, like, if you started to find a path?
Well, the Sanier that we made in 2018 was really interesting, I think. It's like one of the more Moorish wines that we've made. We picked the Pinot quite late-ish, when it was ripe.
Yep.
And we direct pressed it basically, and then blend. So no, that's not true. We let it sit for a couple of days on as whole bunches.
Sure.
And then we pressed it.
Right.
And it sort of gave this very, it's like it's a red, almost like a rosé, but ripe and. Fruit forward, but it has texture.
Sure.
It has texture, and I think the acidity's there, and it ends up being quite a delicious wine. So
great.
This is something that we're playing with. So instead of fermenting on skins till the end, we ferment for 2, 3, 4 days or something.
Fantastic.
And then press it off, and that's the wine.
Get those nice tannins out, and then discard the rest. Yeah,
exactly.
And so do you reuse the skins for anything, or just compost?
Well, we have a process for composting.
Yeah.
And that works really well in terms of cycling in the viticultural side of things. You pick the grapes, you take what you need, and you compost the rest, and then it goes back into the vineyard. I really love that idea. It's a closed system approach that really works.
Yeah. So
If I have my act together and we're talking about this other project, it would be really nice to still, like
Sure.
ferment them and still them.
throw some water over them and drain that out. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's what you can do with your nighttime, mate. You can sit down here, rocking the baby with your still, be like a meth lab.
Exactly. Just cooking it up.
Yeah. So that was one of the. So the Sanye work well, like not a full ferment on skins. So then you don't reuse those skins anywhere else in the winemaking. You, at the moment, compost those. What? And that's the east block. You did that. Yeah, east facing block. Yeah. So then, what else is working with Pinot on the other block here?
Well, whole bunches are out now for sure. I've done my dash with whole bunches and trying to make a Pinot with whole bunches that I really like. Gentle maceration.
Yeah.
In terms of extraction and actually keeping the ferments cool. I've always thought that the ferments should be warm, to extract the tannin and it's healthy and everything. But I think going forwards we'll be doing much cooler ferments, keeping it around sort of 25 is like maxing out majorly. Maybe one day, half a day at 25.
And how do you control that within the winery or?
Yeah, so refrigeration of grapes in the beginning, and then what we usually do is if the ferment's getting too hot, we'll actually drain the juice out of the ferment and leave it overnight in the cool of the winery. And that usually burns off 2 or 3 degrees overnight.
Yeah, okay.
It's a good thing.
Yeah, nice. Yeah, our ferments are in little 600 to 700 kilo lots, and they're all sort of foot crushed and then hand plunged. But yeah, we do a bit of moving them out at night. And we just find because, if we need to heat them up, we sort of bunch them all up together, and then the thermal mass gets everything sort of excited. And otherwise we split them apart and spread them out and they cool down.
Thermal mass is the thing where we can control the temperature.
Yeah.
And the thermal mass also allows the ferment to go dry and gives you very good stability.
They're all hanging out together towards the end of ferment. It's like, come on, let's go.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, thermal mass is really important in fermentation, I think. For getting clean ferments. Yeah.
Cool. And then you've got the Chardonnay, you're making 2 wines?
Yeah, the clover. So it's the long rose and the which is sort of west facing, and then we have actually it's more northwest facing, and then going around we have the ABC, which is more sort of southeast facing. So it's almost like a bowl.
Yeah.
It's a natural amphitheater that we have here. And the soil type's quite different. The clover is on a thicker clay.
Yep.
We have a lot of red clay, ancient soils in Basque Range, very red clay soils. And when we go around to the ABC side, we basically end up with finer, more loamy soils, and the sandstone's actually quite a bit higher. So like everything sits on these big sandstone shelves,
right?
And those sandstone shelves can be like right at the surface of the slope, or they can be recessed right deep down. And for the ABC, it's maybe just 2 meters below, or something like that, and basically that the roots of getting into that sandstone, and actually the minerality in the ABC wine now, it's quite different from the clover, which is on this red clay.
Yeah, cool. And then the neb, is that been made? And
yeah. The neb's really interesting. It's a totally different beast. Obviously, being Italian, big bunches. It's the first to go through bud burst. It's the first to flower, and then the last to go through veraison, and the last to pick by about 6 weeks.
6 weeks?
Yeah. So our vintage usually starts at the beginning of March and goes for 2 weeks, and then everything gets fermented, pressed off, put into barrel, put away, Anzac Day's coming up.
Booking your flights to Bali.
The whole vineyard's turned yellow, and the Nebbiolo is just like, yeah, maybe. Maybe next week though as well, and it just kind of goes on. Like you sort of just go, how much longer can this go on? And eventually it does get there. It really does. And usually we have these big breaking rains which totally change the season, change everything. In May, sometimes they come in late April, but May, and we'll sort of get like 80 mils of rain in a week or something like that, and that's kind of like the end of the season. Sure. That's the full stop. And so if we see them coming up, the neb's getting picked anyway. So.
Right. So you're picking as late as May for the
Yeah, we can. Wow. Yeah, no problem. Wow. No problem. Yeah. Yeah. It's an interesting variety, and it doesn't like being it doesn't like the hot weather so much. It's particularly during ripening, and it's not because it starts ripening, it actually closes down, and it'll sit there green for weeks if it's too hot.
Wow, that's amazing.
It needs the fog.
It
needs the cool. It needs the cool days and the cool afternoons, and then all of a sudden it
comes alive.
Does its thing.
Yeah. Well, that's great.
Yeah.
And have you made one before you'd put it in?
No, I just sort of in my in my travels and drinking, I always just really loved the mystery of Nebbiolo.
It's pretty out there, isn't it, compared to everything else?
It's such a fine sort of tannin wine that's monstrous as well. Yeah, it's both. Yeah, and I really like that. It's got this lightness and this prettiness and this thinness to it, but the tannins just like pervade, and you end up with this thing. You're just like, what is this thing? And you kind of you open the bottle and you maybe don't think much, and by the last glass you're just
hooked. Yeah. Sometimes you try them and you just go, oh, why did I spend so much money on this? And then you just like leave it, go and do something, or maybe I'll crack something else. I'll have another look at it. Oh, it's a bit better. Maybe I can stick with it. And then by the end of it, you're getting married.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it's nuts.
Yeah.
Oh, that's cool. So, so the winding back to the vineyard. So you've done the grafting here. What are the biggest challenges that you've faced with? I think as we were talking before, you were mentioning the clumping grasses that you've got here that you're trying to manage. So how do you manage all your undervine, or is it you just slashing and snipping?
Yeah, I mean, so the organic viticulture started in 2013, I think, 14.
Yep.
And in the beginning, it was quite easy. I mean, not spraying undervine and just spraying copper. I mean, that's what we did anyway, spray copper and sulphur really. And not spraying undervine was all right, fine. Just mow, do a double pass. We had a few bits of machinery that were sort of vaguely worked with these undervine mowers that you can get. There's thousands out there, these orchard mowers, and I
think I've been through all of them.
Exactly. Yeah. And they don't really, I mean, I would suggest it's like a Band-Aid.
Yep.
It's like, the grass is getting a bit high, we'll just cut it down and that'll be fine. And basically over the years now we're confronted with all sorts of challenges in going forwards and being able to make a sustainable organic vineyard. So not just not sprayed organic vineyard, no non-organic inputs, because you still need to look after the soil, you still need to look after the balance in your vines. Long grasses, particularly where we are in some of the corners, do promote things like downy mildew. And it can get really tangled and really dense and really out of control really quickly. We are in monoculture with vineyards. That's what they are. So even though we promote diversity at some times of the year, other times we actually don't want that, because we dry grow the fruit, the vines, and so they need moisture, they need mulch, they need nutrients. and they need a flow. They need the soil to be alive, and they need the soil to flow for them.
Yeah.
And so we're at a point now where we're developing ways of managing the undervine, where we can promote the soil health and prevent loss of moisture, and also keep the vines with access to as much water and nutrients as they can get to. So we're at a point now where we do undervine cultivation. So we have like a finger roller, a finger hoe, and that basically cuts down the side of the row and turns the soil over to the undervine and disturbs that undervine, so it prevents the weeds, and forms this mound. And the idea is in the springtime, that's what we're doing. Through the summer, we're making these mounds. Before the winter and in the season, and then in this early spring, we actually take those mounds away
With a blade.
with a blade.
Is that a Fisher that you've got, or is it the...
So we've got a Suslikov, which is from Bordeaux. It's a mechanical thing they use in their enjambeurs.
Right.
Those over the top tractors, and but it's basically got a spade plow on it with the trigger. So the spade just pulls the soil back under vine. So in the springtime, the vine is full of the new weeds.
Yep.
And you come through and you demound and you remove those weeds, and then hopefully you have a grace period of a couple of months before the new weeds start growing.
Sure.
And then you begin to mound again.
Right. That's because I think when you're converting, from our experience from converting vineyards, you do get a grace period where things have been knocked back for years, and it is, as you say, management, but eventually things come back stronger. I mean, with us at the moment, my lawn at home is shocking, but my lawn at the vineyard that I don't want, I can't stop. And I think we did the worst thing ever with our finger weeder for the mounding, is we had some cooch in an area, and we went through the finger weeder and just mounded it, which just meant we had like a 15 to 20 centimetre deep sort of cooch matrix pile thing that we had to get rid of. Usually the rains would fall and flatten things out, or we don't have a blade. So we had to buy all this other equipment to go through and try and punch down these big mounds of cooch that were just strangling the vines, taking the nutrients, taking the water. Yeah, it's just ongoing.
It is ongoing, and you have to be careful as well that you're not driving the tractor too many times through the vineyard. I mean, I could drive the tractor through the vineyard 100 times if I wanted to.
I know.
And you don't want to. I mean, you really that's one of the things you're like, okay, well, because it's a monoculture, yes, but it feels to me more like a garden in lots of ways, and especially the amount of times you're going through to do the shoot thinning and the sucker removing, and you're putting wires up, and you're doing your biodynamic applications. You spend a lot of time in there, and you want it to feel and look in a certain way. You don't want it just to be a runway for a tractor.
No.
Because you have a relationship with those vines, and you want to look after them, and driving a tractor through them, 50 times in a growing season is not something that's conducive to that environment.
No, it's like the compaction and the fact you're sitting there. How much diesel am I using just to
exactly? And you're blowing the diesel everywhere, and you're compacting, and you're driving through faster and faster, and you're getting less of a connection with the with the vines. It literally becomes a chore to drive the tractor through the vineyard. Once again, because something else has to be fixed. I really feel like getting away from that sentiment of basically a vineyard being a chore to get to the end to be able to make the wine.
Sure.
And you can get caught in that sort of feedback loop of thinking, okay, there's a problem out there. All right, well, we got to put that tool on and go and address it. And there's another problem. We got to put that on, and and now there's an outbreak of that, so we got to spray, and it becomes this thing where you're constantly fighting back these problems, and they just, so long as there's no problems, there is no problem. But that's not true. I don't think so. I think you have to be a little bit more proactive and see the vines for what they are and see the beauty in things growing together and the different plants that are growing and the different ways that the vines are reacting to different things, and watch them grow and actually take delight in that process, because that's actually where the fun part of winemaking, viticulture is. It's a funny thing, and that's sort of what gets me up in the morning and excited to be out there. Otherwise, it just is a chore.
Yeah,
you know? Yeah.
So, that's really interesting. So we've, the size of the vineyard we're running now, it's sort of a lot of the things we're doing is a chore, just because I can't touch every vine anymore like I used to. When we started with 4 hectares, and now we bought the new place, which is 20, and it's just nuts. It's madness. Yeah,
and that's the decision that you have to make. I mean, everyone is on their own journey in the way that they like to do things and the way that they think and getting to that point. And that's the thing that I've been, I guess there's been a few things that have been warning signs of going, don't get too big, because it will become that thing of, oh God, that vineyard over there has got, the worst bunch rot I've ever seen. How did that happen? Or that, and then you become this thing. It's just like, I have to spray 10 times a year no matter what. Yeah. And you almost do need to get to that point. And when you are so big, you do get to that point where you do need to run it by numbers. There's no other way of doing it. And I understand and totally respect that. That's just the way it's got to be. It's a different kind of approach.
Yeah.
But we've only sprayed once here.
Right. Wow. this
season.
Yeah. Well,
and
late November now.
Yeah. And I've seen some downy mildew in some of the suckers, so I know that it's there. But because we spend a lot of time in the vines, it might be naive and might be stupid, but I kind of feel like if a change does happen, I will be close to being on top of it.
Sure.
Do you know what I mean?
I do.
And knowing what the season has done this year, knowing that the pressure is not as strong, knowing that there is a small outbreak of downy mildew that will get worse, no doubt, if we have any rain in January or February, but knowing that it's there and knowing how to sort of treat that and address it, you can be cool. You can have less input into the vineyard in that sense. You can just sort of let it roll a little bit more, and that's the thing. That's the difference between, having, as you say, 4 hectares, and 20 hectares, they're just different.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. No, it's a very good point. And then, because it's a smaller one and you're in there so often, when you've seen it, you know where it is. If you get a bit nervy, you can just put a backpack on and go to that point. You don't have to jump on the tractor.
I was thinking about that. Yeah. You can get those Air Blast backpack sprayers, the steel petrol powered ones, and just go and stand at the vine which has got the downy outbreak and just spray in the direction where the wind usually comes from.
Yep. So there's we driving the tractor through as well, and the diesel thing, we were thinking about that a bit. So we have just built with my Sparky a little biodiesel plant. So we get all the fish and chip oil from the local fish and chip shop, because we're quite close to a tourist town. Yeah. So in summer, fish and chips are flying everywhere. So we're converting that oil to biodiesel so that we can run the tractor. It doesn't mean we just drive whenever we want, but it just makes us feel better about when we do get out there. Yeah.
I did get some biodiesel, and we did put it in we've got a Kubota old lugger tractor, and then we ran it. We ran it until it stopped.
Right.
And the tractor literally stopped. It stopped. It was really weird. Tractors usually don't stop.
Yeah.
The engine died going up the hill, and it stopped, and we couldn't get it to start. And then we opened up the fuel filter, and it was literally full of little bits of chips.
Oh.
Or something.
Yeah, ours is filtered. Yeah, it goes through a few stages.
No, it did get filtered. It did get filtered. I don't know what it was. It looked like chips. Maybe it wasn't, but it was definitely really fine.
Sure.
bits of
fine
something.
chips. Yeah. Nice. Anchovies, like little fish bones.
Little bones.
Yeah. That's funny. Yeah, we're don't worry, we're actually going half. That's the plan to start. I think we're firing it up next week. It's been a long-term project.
Yeah.
Yeah, cool. So what's next from here? Just more, feeling your way with it and enjoying. You got a young family. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah, balance, work-life balance. I just want to get the systems down. There's a great calmness and a great sort of sense of harmony when systems are working.
Yeah.
And I think it's a huge battle early on. And I'm talking the first 10 years of, organic viticulture. I'm sure it's always a battle, but I think you can find a balance, and your vines and your vineyards come into balance, and once you're there, I think the sort of uncomfortable feeling in your stomach goes away or gets smaller, or you don't feel it as often. That basically everything needs to be under control.
Yeah.
And I would really like to get to that point. I think there's a real art to being able to manage a piece of land and have it in control. It's easier and faster to do it with chemicals.
Yep.
And you can have a really nice looking vineyard with the different sprays and and fertilizing and everything. I mean, it's green, it's very healthy, whatever. But getting there with organic viticulture, but getting to the same spot and being able to dig into the ground and there's worms there.
Exactly.
And it's healthy, and you've got ladybugs and butterflies in the vineyard during the springtime, but it still is under control and uniform, and the vines have got the same equal number of bunches and this kind of thing. There's definitely an art there.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you get closer and closer every year, and then you have a few ups and downs, of course, during that time, and then but you never get there.
No,
which is part of the charm. Yeah. Or you get there once and you don't quite get there the next year, and you're like, oh, that's amazing.
You see it for a moment.
Yeah,
you get a moment.
Yeah, it's like a Friday afternoon. You're just like, that's done. This is looking good. Everything's fine. I'm just going to go home, and then Sunday morning it starts hailing, and you're.
Exactly.
Exciting.
Exactly.
Well, I'm conscious you've got to get back to the family, mate. So
indeed.
Thanks so much for catching up and having a chat.
Yeah. Lovely.
All right, mate. Well, anything else we want to?
No, I think we've talked a fair bit. Unfortunately, more about vineyards than wine.
No, that's what it's about. That's where wine's made.
It's wine's good. I mean, the other side of things is wine. The wine side of things is great. I hope that everyone begins to understand that wine is like a drug, and it's just a fun drug to enjoy, and to kind of help with digestion, and just to get the conversations flowing. And I was talking to my friend about this the other day, about the different kinds of drunk and the different kinds of substances that you drink to get to a different kind of drunk.
Yes.
And I think and wine is a drug for sure. It's got alcohol in it. It does what it does. But, natural wines, they do give this very sort of pleasant drunkenness, and, you eat them with good food and you have a good time, and, the conversation gets going, and, the digestion happens, and it's a good time. So, because everyone uses some kind of drug, it's part of being human. And I think with natural wine, it's very much like something that's healthy. It is healthy and sustainable in that world.
Yeah, in that exactly.
In that world, if you choose to partake in those kinds of things. So hopefully people start to see that in Australia, and we get a little bit of that sort of food wine vibe happening. Yeah, where we can drink a lot and still be cool. Still be having a good time.
So where can people get your wines? I guess they're generally sold out. Can they jump on a website?
No, I mean, the Aristologists, the Summertown Aristologists.
We didn't even talk about that, your restaurant. It's just legendary.
That's, that's...
I think we're going there for a drink with Gareth this afternoon.
Oh, beautiful.
Yeah.
That's nice. That's a place you can get the wines for sure. They float around, man. I don't know. They're around. They
Cool.
are around.
They're around.
They're around. The Summertown Aristologist website is cool. And then, I don't know. There's all sorts of places all over Australia.
So Kath from Inbibo does it Australia-wide, is it?
She does.
Yep. Are you exporting anything at the moment?
We do. We export quite a bit to Japan and Denmark.
Cool.
A little bit into France.
Nice.
Which is
still nice to the Eskimos.
Yeah, that's right. That's what I think. Singapore is really cool.
Cool.
Yeah, I
love Singapore.
Singapore is a cool little place. And Hong Kong, but Hong Kong not so much at the moment.
Doing a trade visit at the moment, or no?
Hong Kong not so much at the moment. Hong Kong is yeah. They're on hold at the moment.
Yeah. Fair
but
enough.
they're usually, and it's such a cool place to visit when it's not in total upheaval. Hopefully they sort it out.
Yep. Cool, man.
Yeah, man.
All right. Thanks so much.
Voila.
Cheers. Well, I hope you enjoyed that episode with Jasper Button. All links, show notes, etc. can be found at realwinepeople.com. I hope to be speaking to you soon. We've got about 2 weeks to go of vintage here. 1.5 hectares left on our Quindalup block, which may allow some time to maybe do a few more interviews and get some more podcasts out. Thanks again, everyone, for listening. If you'd like to, please leave a review on the iTunes or podcast app. All that stuff really helps. And I hope to speak to you soon. Thanks very much. Bye.